What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the range. We're going to be comparing three guns. I've mentioned this in the Daniel H9 video that I'd be comparing the Daniel H9 to the Glock 19 to the Staccato C2. And while this is interesting to me, it's because these guns represent three different price points. You get into about, $650 for a Glock MOS. You basically double that to go up to a Hudson H9. And you double that basically to get into a Staccato C2. Now, one thing that is going to be true, and it is true in everything, not just handguns, but you don't get twice as much performance for spending twice as much money. So this is going to be an interesting deep dive into kind of see how the diminishing returns curve is going to pay off, because the other thing that you need to think about when you're watching videos like these, any video on YouTube really, think about your own personal ability and skill. And think about the presenter's skill and ability, because stuff that's important to that presenter may not be important to you. And a good example of that is I'm a competitive shooter, so guns that allow me to go fast and be super accurate, kind of at the line of what I can control a handgun, really love that kind of stuff. But if you can't rapid fire, 5-6 shots per second, hold the gun flat and stuff like that, those features are not necessarily a benefit to you. So consider that when you're watching these kinds of videos, when you're making your own call. So first things first, because these guns are so different, I want to talk about kind of the guns, their triggers, their ergos, and how they conceal. They're all roughly the same footprint of gun. They're roughly, a 15 round grip type gun. If I stack them on top of each other, they all basically fill out the same sort of footprint. Well, let's talk about each one of these guns. So first and foremost is the Glock. The Glock is a double stack. It's kind of a big boy. It's one of the thicker ones across the slide. So when you actually go to carry it, and this is a Harry's holster, it doesn't carry quite as nicely as the other two, which are just a little bit thinner across the slide. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Let's talk about the trigger on the stock Glock. This is a hinge trigger. Obviously, it's the only hinge trigger on the table. Pull is about 5.5 pounds on this one, like actually 5.5 pounds. And the wall is very mushy. There's tons and tons of give, but the reset is very forceful. It pushes your finger back off trigger and lets you shoot real fast. So it is a nice feeling gun. It was one of the best lightweight guns as far as a platform that you could shoot fast for a very long time. Jump up to the Hudson H9. The frame material changes from polymer to aluminum, and the trigger is changing into this weird, like, it's got a trigger safety, but it like hinges from the bottom. So it goes flat, and then you pull to the rear, and it's about a 6-pound trigger on this particular gun. Similarly, the trigger's a little bit cleaner than the Glock, a little, not a ton. It's not an amazing trigger, not by a long shot, but it is so very thin. This is a TXC holster for the H9 that it actually carries pretty well. And one of the reasons it carries so well is because it has a 4¼ inch barrel. It has a lot of keel down in the trousers there, so that it is more stable in the belt line. I actually really like how this carries. Combine that with a very nice texture on the grip that doesn't tear up your stomach, but does kind of grab you when you're going to shoot it, kind of creates a nice shooting experience. Now, there is the beaver tail, which some people have identified as potentially a hot spot you can impale yourself on. I've carried the gun a good bit. I haven't had that issue yet, but it is a consideration. Stepping up to the Staccato C2, this is a different style of holster. It's a JM Custom Kydex holster. And the C2 is a nice, kind of nice to carry, I'll say, because the grip is so big. It kind of carries a lot like a Glock does, honestly. But it does have the thinner slide, so it goes nicer in the belt line. It's got the nicest trigger of the guns on the table at about a 4-pound trigger. Super, super precise, super short. Best trigger by miles. It is gunsmith fit. So in theory, it's gonna have better accuracy when we stretch it out and try and print small groups at 25 yards. The gun is an aluminum frame as well with a polymer grip. So it's gonna feel very much in hand, kind of like the Glock will, sort of, but with a more pronounced beaver tail and a manual safety. So we're gonna do rapid fire, get some slow motion video of the gun shooting. All right, shooting the guns in recoil, the Glock definitely felt the snappiest. I felt like I had to work harder with the Glock. It's just not, it's the lightest gun on the table, and it just, it's a top heavy gun, so it feels like it wants to jump up and down. The Hudson H9 felt the most stable, and that's largely due to the beaver tail, the lower bore axis on the gun, the aluminum, and the fact it is a 4 1/4 inch slide on a 15 round grip, kind of like a Glock 17 upper on a Glock 19 lower. The Staccato was similarly pretty stable. I was pretty surprised by how stable it was, but it has me kind of curious. So we're going to do some doubles real quick and just see what kind of accuracy we're going to get when I stand at 7 yards and just do hammered pairs on a target. So let's look at those. All right, doubles at 7 yards. We're going to start with Mr. Glock 19. There's my Glock mag. We're just going to do 10 shots of hammered pairs. We're going to pay attention to kind of some splits as well as how I'm able to return the gun. Now, the Glock does pay a disadvantage because I am least fluent with the Glock grip angle right now. So here we go. Let's see what we can do here. That's still pretty good. I'm well pleased with that. The gun absolutely feels like it's throwing my trigger finger forward, and the results on target are fantastic. That's roughly a palm-sized group, which is what you want to see. All right, we got the H9. I've got the least amount of trigger time on this type of platform than the other guns. Let's see what I'm able to do with it. It's pretty stable, so I'm hoping for good things. Yep, I would say that that's pretty much a draw. There was one shot that came back high and one that I pushed left, but roughly the size of a palm as well. Good stuff all around. Now, in theory, Mr. Staccato, because it costs twice as much, should be half the size, but I think we'll see that my skill is going to manifest with that gun as well. All right, Mr. C2, 7 yards. Let's see what we can do here. These grips are so different, it's going to take me a second to get comfortable on the guns. All right, that's feeling pretty good. All right, I would say that that's actually probably the best group I got out of these guys. Started kind of walking right, but honestly, it's not bad. Before we do the accuracy testing, I'm going to take some time and zero these guns to the ammo we're using so the results aren't polluted. All right, so here we are at the 7 yard line. We've got our practical array here, and we'll start with the H9. So what we're going to do is hit factor scoring. It's points divided by time. A's are 5, C's are 3, D's are 1, and any misses or hits on the white target, that's the no shoot, are going to be a penalty of minus 10 points, so that's a good thing to avoid. I got a brass case there on the ground. Let's get going here. That was fantastic as a 259. All right, where'd my case go? There's my case. I can probably push a little harder on that. All alpha. Unload, show, clear. That's a 249. So that was very nice. Shooting that gun, super controlled. Recoil impulse is great. Hits are great. It's 7 yards though, so everything's gonna feel great, I bet. All right, we got Mr. C2 at 7 yards. Curious how this is gonna go. The Hudson was fantastic. All right, number 2. All right, looking good. So I can tell you that the C2 slaps in the palm a lot harder than the H9. That's all alpha in 277. Just as a little taken aback from how much it's slapping my palm. Let's give it a go. All right, that's more likely 274. So very consistent. I don't feel as stable with that as I did with the H9. It's very easy to control the trigger, but at the same time, it just slaps at the top of the gun because the gun's rotating more, I guess, is what it feels like. So shooting them back to back, that's something that I'm noticing. All right, we got Mr. Glock bringing up the rear at the 7 yard line. Let's see what we got going on here. A little bit more dot. That's looking good. All right, here we go. That's all alpha and 275, so it's very, very similar to C9. The holes are right next to each other, but I'm not running the gun kind of predictively because I'm not familiar with Glocks. Great shot. I mean, the holes are all right next to each other. It's pretty damn good. Glock at speed at 7 yards, 4 alpha, 4 alpha, 4 alpha. But at the same time, that was a 276, so super consistent. I do feel like I can run the H9 a bit quicker with how it just, there's less recovery needed there. I did not expect to see that, but you know, how much does that matter when you're talking about 2/10 at 7 yards? You tell me. It's not even 2/10, 1/10. All right, so here we are back at 15 yards, and this is going to be what really starts to separate the men from the boys, as it were. This is usually where you'll begin to see the differences start to manifest on the ability to hold tight groups due to ergonomics, trigger, and just downright, you know, the inherent accuracy of the gun. Anything inside 10 yards can print a small group, but when you start to back it up beyond 15 is where that starts to show up. So we're gonna get started here with the Staccato. Since it went in the middle last time, it'll go first this round. We just rotate down from there. So, all right, got it. All right, the middle segment there, that's 1 Charlie in 377. I've definitely paid a penalty on time. I don't know what happened there, but that's pretty horrible. All right, that's much better. Again, that's all alpha except for that 1 Charlie in 328. So we will restore the targets and go again. All right, here we go, Mr. Glock. Got my dot, everything's looking great. Let's go, baby. All right, that's 1 Charlie on the center target. I threw it high into the headspace on the second shot, and 320. It doesn't feel like it slaps as hard as the C2. It's kind of interesting to shoot them sort of back to back. All right, that is, yeah, just 1 Charlie on that center target. So a total of 11 alpha, 1 Charlie. The Glock is still quicker. I mean, that's 310 that time. So I'm shooting the Glock quicker than I can shoot the C2, which is surprising because it's more abrupt and a little bit violent, but it doesn't feel like it's, I just feel like I'm glued to the gun a little bit better. So I'm curious to see how Mr. H9 is gonna do that. All right, got Mr. H9 at 15 yards. Let's go. That's a 324 all alpha. That felt easy. The trigger being weird, I threw a Charlie on the far right target there. The trigger being weird in 316. It's definitely the fastest gun of the three. I feel more comfortable and more unified with it. Hits are fine. The trigger, it's so different that it's taking some getting used to. I suspect I'll pay a penalty for that at 25, but let's find out. The wind caused a couple of my cameras to take spills, and that's not good. But 25-yard line, back to the top of the order with the Glock. This is where, I mean, if I'm gonna get my hits, I'm gonna have to slow down and take care with all of these guns, and the triggers and ergos will punish in a way they haven't previously. That looks like a good spot to aim. Let's do that. All right, I think that's all alpha in 493. That's pretty slow. Let's see what we can do. I'll be honest with you guys, the Glock 19 is looking pretty good. I'll go grab those hits and we'll see how we did. But I mean, I felt in control with the wide, broad grip of the 19. And even though the trigger is particularly squishy, that's a totally stock trigger, by the way, boys. And I feel like I can do what I need to do with the gun. It feels great, to be honest. All right, the Glock looked pretty good. And this trigger I'm not as comfortable with, so I'm not sure I'll be able to deliver those same results, but let's see what we can do. All right, that's a 413, so that's faster than the fast Glock time. Those hits are all good. Those might be all alpha. All right, I think I maybe threw 3 Charlies that time. They're all very close to the A zone. One was a bad trigger pull, another one was coming down high. So that might even be a Delta. Let's go look at them. But I mean, all in all, it felt good for 417. There's my brass. Let's go, friends. All right, 419, not bad. I think this is where the C2's advantage should shine. All right. That one's a 436, a little bit slower that time, but still pretty close. I think that was pretty good. Let's just go look at the hits. At that distance, I can kind of forgive the slappiness of the recoil when you're shooting at kind of that pace. But, you know, inside, I definitely prefer the way the other 2 guns shoot. Line 2 Alpha, 2 Charlie. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, where'd it go? It's not on the no shoot. No, it's not on the no shoot. Is that 2? It's not 2. It's gonna be 2 Alpha, 1 Charlie, 1 Mike. And that's going to be 2 Alpha, 2 Charlie. 25-yard line. We had the Glock going first last time, so H9 will go first this time. This is the trigger that I have the least amount of familiarity with, and I think it is punishing me. That was me holding the slide out of battery with my thumb. I think it's going to punish me, but we're just going to shoot the guns one to the next and see where we get, so I won't bore you with bullseye shooting. Seemed like 8. All right, none of those are very good groups. Let's go look. So that's Mr. H9. That's actually a pretty good group. It's just my zero is about 2 inches too high, and I would say probably 1.5 inches right. So I just need to get that dialed in. But it's not a bad group right there. It's pretty good. Mr. C2, quit blowing wind. Mr. C2, that's not the best group right there. It's kind of all over exploring the space of the target, but, you know, good enough. The Glock group was not bad considering I have like 0 fluency. Honestly, I'm a little shocked just how bad the C2 group is, since that's the gun I'm most fluent with based on which gun I compete with. As much as I would love to say that the C2 delivers, you know, the best value for a gun in this size category, I can't say that I shot it better. In fact, I think I shot it worse than the Glock. I don't know what the scores were. I guess we'll find out when I edit this video. But I gotta believe with the mic that this gun lost the practical thing. It wasn't the fastest on raw time. I wasn't able to extract precision from it, shooting S&B 115s. You know, decent ammo, not the greatest, but usually very consistent and is accurate in most guns. The Glock surprised me, honestly, because the Glock is the gun I have probably the least amount of trigger time. Recently, I used to compete with Glocks back in the day, so I have a ton of trigger time, you know, 4 or 5 years ago on these things, but I have really kind of walked away from this platform. But I was happy to see about how stable the gun is, how good the accuracy I'm able to get out of it is typically. I know this thing can shoot like hole on hole at 25, because that's what I was able to do when I first got this particular gun way back in the Glock 19 review. But I mean, even being rusty on Glocks, I was pretty pleased with how that landed. The H9 seems promising. My one caveat with it is this trigger is so bizarre that I'm not quite used to it yet. So I'm gonna need to get used to this trigger and how it moves around. The trigger length is very long. I think that if you're not a large to XL gloved hand, you'll have a hard time reaching the trigger on this. However, it's like a Goldilocks for size. Like, the thing is absolutely fantastic for the size of the gun. It carries brilliantly. I think I'm gonna invest more time into shooting this H9 and see if I can't develop more fluency. The C2, I'm probably just gonna put in the safe. I mean, I wanted this gun to win, kind of, because it is the most expensive and I bought this. But I can't perform with it. It's just not, I don't know, as familiar and good as that feels, it's not the most pleasant to shoot. Despite the good trigger and the familiar ergos, I'm not able to extract accuracy from it. It just, I don't know what it is about this thing, man. And I mean, the Glock is a workhorse. The Glock does brilliantly. I mean, if I were to rank them, I would say H9 is 1, the Glock is number 2, and honestly, I'd put the C2 at number 3. That's just my personal one. I'm sure some people are gonna be upset by that, but I mean, if you've got some buddies, borrow some guns, set up this kind of test for yourself, answer your own questions. My opinion honestly doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, so do what makes you happy, as long as it's legal and ethical and you're being a good dad and all that good stuff.